here because he's deciding that this is a very important comment. And what it is specifically talking about the whole thing, how bhakti, people tend to take the seminal family coming down by biological birth as being the real thing to worship and respect. Of course, this comes down with different kings, right? In the families of kings, they became very degraded and everything else until finally, England has a king still, or a queen, and people consider this as the last time because one of them already abdicated, right, and decided to become a common person. Yeah. And then the other one is Nepal, or is it finished? I don't know. Nepal, I know, was just going through it so see that people deciding this doesn't work, And so we can, of course, have the same thing, Prabhupada, Prabhu, I'm a Prabhupada disciple, Prabhu. I see that. Okay. I mean, you were, but yeah. So there is, my feeling is Maharaj is being a little too heavy here. My godbrother, we can discuss, we do these things. We argue and then afterwards we're happy to see each other. Yeah? I think he's being a little bit too heavy on it because Prabhupada also mentions, yes, taking birth as the son of a high court judge is a qualification, for becoming a high court judge. It gives you proper position, facility like that. But the real thing is actually acquiring the qualification, and so on. So here we go, okay. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, Saraswati Thakur, has made a very important comment on this verse. He states that since the intentions of the Supreme Lord Krishna Chandra are always perfect, it was certainly in consideration of the greatest wealth, greatest benefit for the entire world that he destroyed his own family on the pretext of a curse by a Brahmana. In this connection, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has shown a parallel in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself appearing as his own devotee. So when was this taking place? What year, approximately? In the 19th century? When did Bhaktisiddhanta write this? When was Bhaktisiddhanta born? You don't know? I think it was 1875, like that. I think so. Huh? Pretty close. Okay. So who was born in 1875? Prabhupada said amongst all the Western philosophers, he's the greatest. Carl Jung. See, very, very interesting, no? Yeah. So I said among the greatest of all the Western philosophers, and their lives is 1 year difference. So Bhaktisiddhanta was going through this whole experience in India, which was quite separated. They had, I guess they had telegraph communication, but they were still traveling by boat. There was no airplane, And the other side, Carl Jung was growing up in the West and experiencing all these things and, coming to some interesting conclusions. So there's a very, very excellent book called Jung and India, where the lady went through all this history and found all this stuff. And he was there with the British Science Congress, which had been invited by the Indian Science Congress, when Prabhupada was about, I think, 40 years old in Calcutta. And this whole thing was going on like that. And the Gaudiya Math didn't make a big response or a contribution to it. I don't know why. So this is when it was. Bhaktisiddhanta was not talking about this now. He was talking about this, back probably about 1910, 1912, 1913 in India, And when he was talking about it, it was very prominent, very powerful, what he was dealing with at that time. Lord Chaitanya appeared, and he's talking about how the same example is there in Lord Chaitanya's pastime. Lord Chaitanya appeared along with his plenary expansion known as Lord Nityananda Prabhu and with Lord Advaita Prabhu. All these personalities, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, and Advaita Prabhu, are accepted by Vaishnava Acharyas to be in the category of Vishnu Tattva, the full status of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These three personalities of Godhead perceived that in the future their so-called seminal descendants would get undue recognition, and thus being puffed up would commit grave offenses against those who were actually Vaishnava gurus or representatives of the Lord. Every living being is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. That's stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vangsa. Every living entity is originally a son of God, yet to execute his pastimes, the Lord selects a certain highly qualified living entities whom he allows to take birth in his person as his personal relatives. But those living entities who appear as descendants of the Lord's personal family may undoubtedly become proud of such a position and thus abuse the great adulation they receive from ordinary people. In this way, such persons may artificially get undue attention and divert people from the actual principle of spiritual advancement, which is to surrender to the pure devotee who represents the Lord. The last 8 verses of the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita give a description of the pure devotees the Lord permits to act as acharyas, or spiritual leaders of mankind. In other words, simply to take birth in the personal family of Krishna is not the qualification for being a spiritual master. Since, according to Bhagavad Gita, Pitaham asya jagataha, every living entity is eternally a member of the Lord's family. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Samoham sarva bhuteshu nadresho sti na priyaha. I am equal to everyone. No one is my enemy, and no one is my special friend. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears to have a special family, such as the Yadu dynasty, such a so-called family is a special arrangement of the Lord's pastimes in order to attract the conditioned souls. When Krishna descends, he acts as if he were an ordinary person in order to attract the living entities to his pastimes. Therefore, Krishna acted as though the Yadu dynasty was his personal family. Although, in fact, every living entity is a member of his family. Ordinary people, however, not understanding the higher principles of spiritual knowledge, easily forget the actual qualification of a bona fide spiritual master and instead give undue importance to people born in the Lord's so-called family. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore avoided the impediment on the path of spiritual enlightenment by leaving no children. Although Lord Chaitanya married twice, he was childless. Nityananda, who was also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did not accept any of the natural sons born of his own son. Did not accept any of the natural sons born of his own son, Sri Virabhadra. Similarly, Lord Advaita Acharya divested of his personal association all of his sons except for Achyutananda and 2 others. Achyutananda, the chief faithful son of Advaita Acharya, had no seminal progeny, and the remaining 3 of the 6 sons of Advaita Acharya fell from the path of devotional service of the Lord, and are known as rejected sons. In other words, the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu allowed little facility for continuing a so-called seminal family to create confusion. The respect shows the conception of seminal lineage in deference to the idea of the smartas is unfit to be accepted by one who actually understands the supreme truth from Vedic authority. Other acharyas or spiritual masters have demonstrated this point in their families. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, our beloved spiritual master, who is the mighty author of this Srimad Bhagavatam series, was born in a family of pure devotees. And he himself exhibited all the symptoms of pure devotional service from his very childhood. Srila Prabhupada eventually came to the Western countries and exhibited unprecedented spiritual potency in establishing the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. In a few short years, he translated more than 50 large volumes of Vedic philosophy. By his practical activities, he is certainly understood to be a most empowered representative of the Lord. Nonetheless, his own family members, although devotees of Krishna, did not at all come up to the proper standard. of devotional service and are therefore not given attention by the members of Iskcon. The natural tendency for the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness would be to offer all reverence and worship to the members of Srila Prabhupada's immediate family, but since by Krishna's arrangements these family members are not at all on the platform of pure devotional service, the members of Iskcon give them hardly any attention, okay, but instead worship those who actually exhibit the qualities of highly advanced Vaishnavas, regardless of their so-called birth. Yeah. In other words, birth cannot constitute the qualification for a respectable person. Even when one is born in the Lord's own family or in the Acharya's family, what to speak of an ordinary, wealthy, or learned family. In India, there is a class of men known as Nityananda Vangsha who claim to be direct descendants of Lord Nityananda and therefore worthy of the highest respect for their position in devotional service. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada has written in the Nectar of Devotion, in the Middle Ages, after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya's great associate, Lord Nityananda, a class of priestly persons claimed to be the descendants of Nityananda, calling themselves the Goswami caste. They further claimed that the practice and spreading of devotional service belonged only to their particular class, which was known as the Nityananda Vangsha. In this way, they exercised their artificial power for some time, until Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the powerful Acharya of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, completely smashed their idea. There was a great hard struggle for some time, but it has turned out successful, and it is now correctly and practically established that devotional service is not restricted to a particular class of men. Besides that, anyone who is engaged in devotional service is already a high-class brahmana. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's struggle for this movement has come out successful. It is on the basis of his position that anyone from any part of the world, of the universe, can become a Gaudiya Vaishnava. So apparently one time Guru Das was walking with Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, what will we do after we make this world Krishna conscious? And Prabhupada said, oh, the sannyasis will get on their spaceships and fly to different planets and preach. Okay, so Prabhupada is saying we can make Gaudiya Vaishnavas any part of the universe. In other words, okay, the essence of spiritual knowledge is that every living being, regardless of his present status in life, is originally a servant of the Supreme Lord, and that is the mission of the Lord, and it is the mission of the Lord to reclaim all these fallen living entities. Despite this situation, any living entity who is willing to surrender again at the lotus feet of the Lord is his bona fide representative, can purify himself by strictly adhering to the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, and thus act as a high-class Brahmana. Nonetheless, the seminal descendants of the Lord think themselves to have acquired their ancestors' characteristics and position. Thus the Supreme Lord, who is the well-wisher of the entire universe, and especially his devotees, bewilders the discriminatory power of his descendants in such a way, in such a contradictory way, that these seminal descendants become recognized as deviant. And the actual qualification to be a representative of the Lord, namely unalloyed surrender to the will of Krishna, remains prominent. Wow. So, any questions or comments? Could you please repeat that? Yes, sir. Okay, wow, yeah.
So, Prabhupada came from a very elevated Vaishnava family, which was an advantage. Prabhupada was more than, we understand he was a Nitya Siddha, but still the kind of family we're born into does have an effect. I was reading about some of the early days of the movement in San Francisco area. There was this Morning Star Ranch, and 4 devotees from became Iskcon sannyasis lived at the Morning Star Ranch, where there was, spiritual activities, but there was nudity and other things like that. And Vishnu John Swami, Madhavisha, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and one other one, I forget the name, all became sannyasis. They had been there, but 3 of them didn't maintain their sannyas. So just a comment that if one is born in a Vaishnava family with good parents, it certainly helps. But there's great devotees who have served Prabhupada wonderfully and become truly Brahminical Vaishnavas by their strict adherence to the Krishna consciousness process. Just a comment.
Yeah. So, nectar of instruction, summary of everything, Prabhupada makes exactly these same points. But then he gives a contrast. He says, but on the other hand, those who are American sannyasis should not become puffed up, right? And think that they become something special by receiving this, blessing and everything else, and think, oh, now I'm an American sannyasi, and focus on the external activity. Externally, I'm dressed up like this. Externally, I'm shaved like this, and therefore, neophyte members of Iskcon give me respect, special plate of prasadam, all this kind of stuff. And then they become envious. And Prabhupada says, as soon as we become envious of anybody, we fall from the Paramahamsa platform. So this is interesting in terms of origin of the jiva. Yeah. So that's the other side of the coin, is that, Bhakti Siddhanta had his challenge. He had to establish that anybody properly initiated as a Vaishnava was qualified to worship Shalagram Shila. And what's the other one? To do sacrifice, like that. Yeah. That they were brahmanas. They were brahmanas. Okay. And then after that, Prabhupada came and then spread it all over the world. And Prabhupada was especially fighting against the rascal scientists. That was because these gyan people, science is a kind of gyan view of the world, and we produce all these tantric effects and do all these things, and we know what is the origin of life and everything else. So Prabhupada Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me face to face. Prabhupada said over and over again for his entire last year, scientific preaching is my #1 preaching program. So I was wondering about how much to get involved with the Bhaktivedanta Institute. So, how much is it still going on? How much was Prabhupada able in one lifetime of preaching to actually eliminate science and to establish something else? It still seems very prominent. But, it has changed a lot in terms of how proud they are and everything else and so on. But so every generation, and then then I was thinking that Prabhupada gave us all the books. Then our job was to make movies, right? Take these things and turn them into different kinds of movies. And then Bhakti Charu Maharaj said, I get to the same conclusion, So he did the Abhay Charan series and things like that, So now, I'm, bye-bye, Baba. I'm 2024, I got my, I'm planning, You can count the teeth left, how many years you got left. Yeah. Okay, so, then every generation has their own particular, what do you call it, challenge. And of course, a lot of the challenge is that we don't become confused by it ourselves, right? How are we going to fight it if we actually are thinking that, this is correct, And so already, how many deviations do you think have come into Iskcon? things that you don't agree with, I want to write down, even before I leave, all the things that I think are wrong with Iskcon. Like that. Things that I think, little deviations, big deviations, things like that. But you got to do it in such a way that people think that you've got to use a pen name. Like that. Dr. Gomez came to me from Barcelona in a dream and said these were the things he thought were wrong with Iskcon. How to penetrate it. Of course, Bhakti Siddhanta would be more direct. Right? Bhakti Siddhanta was direct. Anybody know Yadunandan Swami? Anybody know him? He's a really nice devotee. He's from Spain like that. One of the nicest devotees in Iskcon, whatever. Not too big. Very, very nice person, very good person. So he was very much active in this academic area. And so he was like the principal of Radhadesh, the college there. Then for his master's degree, he did a review of sannyas within Iskcon. So it's extremely useful for us and extremely nice for the outside world. And he interviewed something like maybe 150 sannyasis or something, or so many people like that, myself. And do you know Guru Kripa? You know Guru Kripa. Anybody else know Guru Kripa Swami? He and Yashodananda and I were the heavy swamis, When I was coming to this temple in San Francisco, they visited, with their party like that. Guru Kripa's nose was kind of broken from the Vietnam War and stuff, And they were real heavy guys. So they came in and were challenging all the brahmacharis, and they would do Gaur Aratik and, banging away on the drums till blood was coming off of their hands. Blood was coming off their hands. Okay, he said, okay, now we separate the men from the boys. Now we go on book distribution. Okay, so on. So they were really, heavy, Guru Kripa Swami. He was, okay, still. So anyway, when Yadunananda Swami was doing this book, he was interviewing people, and it was very interesting. It seems that most of the sannyasis that fell down, who took initiation from Prabhupada, the American sannyasis who fulfilled the prediction of the Smarta Brahmins and couldn't hold their position, it was not because of sexual agitation, it was because of boredom. Yeah, they did not have anything to do. They they give a class and sit in the room all day until the next class or something, So, but now we have no more what the ashram means and how to be engaged like that. But it just is, God, so boring. Better to be a grihasta and have something to do, like preach and stuff. So that was what many interesting things coming out of the Indian sannyasis that Prabhupada initiated. As far as I know, only one of them had problems and fell down like that. And so, there is qualification, But you can be an Indian sannyasi and not penetrate, right? Because it's so easy to do the job, and you just go on like that easily, being nice and everything else. But Gopal Kumar in Brihad Bhagavatamrita says, sannyas can be, eating good food and not having to work hard. The definition of sannyas, eating good food and not having to work hard. So there is a danger. The New Yorker magazine, it has a little cartoon, and it shows a little guy praying, and he says, O Lord, I do not require much, but I do ask that whatever I have should be of good quality. Seiko wristwatch, Halliburton briefcase, what are the one? Forgot the kind of shoes you get. But it's just very simple, but, everything first class. So there's dangers in every ashram, dangers of being attached to the external features of the thing, and other people being confused by that, and you yourself being confused by that. What is the highest material trap? Okay. There's many answers you can give. But one place Prabhupada says the highest material trap is Varna Ashram Dharma. Right? Because you think that everything is so wonderful. He's a humorous, renowned sannyasi. She's a chaste woman. He's a whatever, brave king. And so everything is it's in the mode of goodness. And you think everything is so nice, And Prabhupada says you can only surpass that when you make friendship with a devotee. And then you realize there's something more, this seems personal, but it's not really, Then you start to realize, wow, this is behind that personal life. But it's useful, right? Chaturvarnya mayashishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. It's useful. So if devotees are using varna ashram, using birth and all these things, they can all be very useful, very important. No? If you're born in Iskcon, Prabhu, I'm born in Iskcon, Prabhu. I mean, how many Gurukulis smoke cigarettes? Do a survey here like that. Yeah. Now it's kind of funny, people saying, Prabhu, I'm a Gurukuli. But by now you're like almost a grandfather or something. Hey, come on. What did you do after that? Yeah, and it wasn't even your choice. You were shoved into the thing. It was miserable. You hated the whole thing and got out as soon as you could because you had half a brain in your head. Okay, yeah. So not being bewildered by the externalities, and even, of course, very much in our own society, it's very easy to be bewildered by the formalities and stuff. What are the 6 things that destroy pure devotional service? Achahara. Yeah. And so this is niyamagraha, accepting rules and regulations, not for the purpose of advancing in devotional service, but to live in a nice place where it's clean, to have nice parties, nice food, right? Yeah, some place to sleep. Yeah. So, this is the content here. Yes, sir. The microphone is coming.
Hare Krishna. So, could you speak a little bit about the importance of the Chaitanya Charitamrita and how one should actually conduct themselves? A lot of what you're saying is there. I mean, there's so much relationship there as opposed to just, like the Bhagavatam basically establishes Krishna in many ways, and devotional service and etc. But the Chaitanya Charitamrita really gives like outlines of how one should live as a devotee. And particularly even when they're talking about the Chaitanya tree, there's little excerpts of all sorts of personalities that lived practically ordinary lives in pure devotional service. So could you just kind of elaborate the Chaitanya Charitamrita for that?
You've already done it. I agree completely. I heard Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati recommend to read Chaitanya Charitamrita first, then the Bhagavatam, Mahabharata. Because Chaitanya Charitamrita is all activity. For me, Chaitanya Charitamrita is a class on Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya is the ideal preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's showing us, how to understand Srimad Bhagavatam and apply it in our lives. The story of Narada Muni and Maharaj Prachini Barishat. This is, 1 million years ago. Things were a little different, And Krishna is killing a 15-mile long witch. Okay, stuff. We worship. For us, God is a giant red hog with a stick. Okay, we worship a giant red hog with a stick. In a few days, we'll be worshiping the half-man, half-lion God. Shringadev Chaturdasi is coming very soon. Tomorrow is Rukmini Dwadasi. Appearance of Rukmini Devi. And then Monday is Jayananda, I guess, Triodasi. We'll be doing an evening program about Jayananda. And then Nrsimha Chaturdasi. So many nice opportunities, nice pastimes. And these are formalities, right? The external formalities, But by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, like you're saying, all this stuff is coming down to us. He was doing these things himself. He was acting out like Lord Nrsimhadev, And you see, like you're saying in there were personalities who were just 500 years ago who we can relate to. And the things they were doing were within the range, Lord Chaitanya didn't kill a 15-mile long witch, right? But, he killed maybe people, mystical things that are within our range of appreciating as something to draw our attention to say, hey, this is worth being involved with them. What is it? One of Lord Chaitanya's disciples, Jagadananda Pandit? No, it was Jagadish Pandit. He could engage in kirtan 72 hours without stopping. That's 3 days. 3 days he would engage in chanting and everything else. And he would go into the jungle and play with cobras and stuff like that, chanting Hare Krishna. Tigers would come up with him, right? He would slap them on the cheeks and say, Haribol, Haribol, yeah. Well, yeah. And then to cool off after this, he would sit in the Ganges, under the water of the Ganges for like 2 hours without breathing, Okay. So this kind of stuff, we begin to think, well, maybe there's something here I should pay attention to. Yeah. And Jesus Christ said the same thing. Unless you see miracles and wonders, you won't pay attention to me. So we do them to attract people. But the problem is that people become attracted to the mystical powers and they forget that the real thing is a change in heart, is to become a simple servant of Krishna. Yeah. So yeah, it was just 500 years ago, and it was within our range of appreciation. Now, for example, to attract attention, German devotees, when Prabhupada was here, Jai, Shri Radha Krishna ki Jai, Shri Radha Madhava ki Jai. He had very beautiful garlands. Radharani has nice hairdress of roses. And the Madhava has beautiful ankle bells made of tulsi flowers. You can smell his feet. Better than glue, right? Yeah. So when Prabhupada was here directly enthusing everybody, right? Yeah. The Germans, of course, were incredible yatra at that time. So I know one of the devotees, Maharam, he was the Sankirtan leader, and he would go out on the Autobahn, German Autobahn, where you have Mercedes-Benz and all these things, and there's no velocity restriction. So these things are maybe going like 100 miles an hour or something like that. He would step right onto the Autobahn and go like this. These cars would go, breaking him right down until he was like directly stopping 1 foot in front of him. Then he would walk around to the passenger, the driver's side, and say, I have something important to tell you. Okay, wow. You got my attention. Then Chakravarti said he saw him one time preaching to a German youth the same age, German guy, 25-year-old German guy, he's 23 years old. And this German guy was not accepting, the philosophy, the culture, so they started preaching back and forth and arguing. And they started pushing each other, and they started hitting each other in the face. Yeah. And then the guy said, all right, I'm convinced I will buy your book. Yeah. Okay. It is an honor to sell it to someone like you. Thank you. Yeah. So, Germans preaching to Germans. Yeah. And women preaching to women. One time, Mother Maheshwari, she was an older Mataji in Berkeley Temple. I was a brahmachari. I mean, a little bit older, So this one new girl had joined from the campus, co-ed, blonde hair, and she was being a little coquettish with the brahmacharis, which normally in our society would have been, she would have considered, okay, that's just, But in temple, of course, it was little agitation, everything else. So she'd been there a few days and was being coquettish with the brahmacharis. Then I heard Mother Maheshwari, call her over, and I listened to I heard maybe the first 2 sentences, then I just left. I was like, I would never talk to a brahmacharini like that, But Mother Maheshwari, yeah. And after that, boom, she was completely, and she accepted it, yeah. So we preach to certain kind of people because it's our nature. We know who they are, what the standards are, the communication is, and we get it across like that. As we become more purified and we go beyond the external things and using our external things for preaching, right? Then we can contact the Paramatma. Then we can preach to anybody. Prabhupada said that once you're in touch with the Paramatma, every single person you can relate to them, which will include the external features like that. Yeah. So, any questions or comments here? Sometime in the future, yeah. So tomorrow, Rukmini Dwadasi, we're going to go tomorrow to Sugarland, right? Ravana's kingdom was made of all gold. Everything was gold, the walls, the floors. So I'm going to go to Sugarland tomorrow. Yes, I think I'll see. It really is. Yeah, for a Hare Krishna devotee, this is paradise, right? Sugar Land. Yeah, yeah. And then we'll go to Kshiti Kapoor's house. Yeah, he's a psychiatrist. Have the broadcast of Sunday program from there. And Saranga Thakur said we should talk a little bit about Jayananda and Nrsingadev. Jayananda is fantastic, topic. A little bit. I can talk for 3 days about him. So when I was joining the temple in San Francisco, he was there, and I read the book, which is very nice because I read Prabhupada's Krishna book for 1 year. So when I came to the temple, I had some kind of like intellectual perspective, some cultural perspective, and otherwise I would have been like, disturbed right from the very beginning. But no, okay, people, not everybody's perfect, and this and that and so on. So carrying on. And maybe about the 4th or 5th time I went there, I was taking prasadam at lunchtime with the devotees, people coming in, and one guy sat down next to me, kind of bigger guy, with old pants on, and he had a belt for a rope, just kind of hanging loose and exposing his, And then he said, hey, where are you from? So I'm from Sacramento, this and that. And he said, oh, yeah, we're having this big festival coming off now, and it's really nice, And I usually get down there in Sacramento and distribute some posters to put in some places like that. And then a lot of people come from there, but I can't get there. My name is Jayananda, Oh, hello, my name is Huber, Okay. And so do you think you could help me out here and take a few posters and put them up? I can give you a list of places like that. Well, okay. And so he gave me like 55 posters, 55 places to go. Yeah. But it was really nice. I would go around. I'm at a good place and hippie stores and all this kind of stuff. And it was really very purifying, everything else. But then my first contact with Jayananda, and I just, he externally, he just looked like the most ordinary person on the face of the earth, like a simple guy like that, so on, But he was able to go right into your heart and touch your heart like that and stuff and make you feel like, I can do that. I just go around and distribute them and put them up and that kind of stuff, So another time, we had a festival. I stayed overnight for the festival, and everybody was working so hard and cooking everything else. The next morning, all the devotees, the brahmacharis, were all like exhausted. I was feeling exhausted. So I was taking the trash around back, to dump it in the compressor. Then way back up in the back, there was, this voice came out to me. He said, "Hey, you're Dr. Hugh, right?" "Oh yeah, hello." Said, me and Jayananda. "Oh, hello." He was up there putting all this stuff away and very active, And he said, these festivals are really killers, But if you hang around after a while, you get a little special mercy. And then because of that, you can, be enthusiastic. "Oh, really?" Stuff, So wow, it's like, made you, okay, I can also become like this, So he had this, potency in terms of what we're talking about now. His Brahmin thread was black from automobile grease, like that, right? Yeah. And he forgot, I don't know how many of the mantras. He said, I can't remember all of them like that, and so on, Yeah. And he would always present himself. For example, Sarvabhauma would ask a question, well, Jayananda. One time I remember Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Rameshwar, and I can't remember, maybe like 3 sannyasis and 2 GBC people were out on the sidewalk in front of the temple, where crossed and went into our big commercial garage. They were all kind of leaning on the car and having a conversation about something there, how to organize things and how to do something in Iskcon. Then I noticed this pair of legs sticking out from under the car, and Jayananda was on there, and he would be making comments from under the car, And so they all went there just to get him involved like that and so on. So whenever you'd ask him like something, well, Jayananda, what do you think? He said, well, I don't know, but maybe, and almost invariably he would quote from Prabhupada's books, And it wasn't like Brahmana exactly, so on, like citing verses and stuff. He memorized verses, many verses, but then he said he forgot a lot of them and stuff like that, I tried that, didn't work for me. But he knew the content pretty well. Sometimes it was a little bit, wasn't quite completely accurate, but the enthusiasm was there. in the thing like that. He told me when I got my name as Hanuman, he tried to tell me stories from the Ramayana, which I later on found out weren't exactly correct, but they were they were like, he told them in such a way, it was like, yeah, and they were basically correct, yeah. So again, he exemplified this thing of showing us that the real essence is the internal qualities, and again and again and again and again and again, as this goes on, every single person, he was able to, even the most hostile people, right? He was able to go right into them and touch their hearts and stuff and make a permanent, lasting change. I'll go on here. He used to go out in the morning to the produce market. Okay, San Francisco has used to have one of the biggest tourist industries in the world. So unlimited numbers of hotels and places like that. So the vegetable market, the produce market was gigantic. It was like, I think it was 2 city blocks long at least, bigger than that, maybe four square. So he'd go out in the morning, and so he wouldn't be in Mongol Arctic. You think, oh, Jayananda's not in Mongol Arctic. No, because he was, Raganuga Bhakti. He knew how to put it all together. He'd usually grab a couple new bhaktas who were trying to figure out who they were, what was going on, He'd given them a lot of halava the night before so they would have strength to get up in the morning. So they were like up and wondering how to stay up. Hey, come on, Bhakti, come with me, Jeffrey, we'll go to the produce market. Okay, so they were, And on the way to the produce market, he would sing the Guruvastika, while driving like that, And even when he was driving in this really big old red truck, it was we'll call it like a cube body truck, a big one, old thing. And he would drive it in such a fashion that it would force you to chant Hare Krishna. He'd be driving like that, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, One time we were coming back from Harinam Sankirtan, a fisherman's wharf, up over the hills and heading back to the temple. And some hippie guy was outside, like, kind of thumbing a ride. And Jayananda stopped and said, call him in, So the guy got in, and suddenly he's sitting there surrounded by 15 brahmacharis, like, all chanting, bees and bald-headed guys and everything else, So, Then he got out, and he had 2 bags of prasada, 3 books, and everything else, like, looking like, Yeah, so Jayananda, yeah. So you go to the produce market, and you get all these donations, of stuff that was like a little too old to sell, but for the temple, with so many people, everything else, we could use it right away. And so they would get benefit that they could claim they donated this, and we got benefit. Then he would put it all away, and by then the whole morning program was over. So he'd come into my little treasury office, a tiny place, I finished my petty cash thing. He said, oh yeah, Hanuman, let's read the Bhagavatam, So we sit down and read the Bhagavatam together and kind of discuss the purports and stuff. And finally I realized that everything was there, right? He had the Guruvastika, he had Kirtan, and usually he got his rounds done before he even before Mongol Arti, And then afterwards he had, Prabhupada's, reading Prabhupada's books, So this is Raganuga Bhakti. He had a taste for it. He just had to have it. And so just naturally he would just put some program together. A neophyte devotee, he wasn't a good example. If you're trying to follow externals and things like that, it took you some time to figure out that Jayananda, who he was. You would follow somebody externally who was in class every day, is going to the thing, which is good. It's good, like that, So he was reaching out to people. So there's one guy in the produce market named Banana King Louis. Banana King Louis. Luis el Rey de Plátanos. Spanish like that. And he had the biggest banana business in San Francisco, And behind him, on the wall, he had a big picture of himself, and it said, do not ask what Banana King Louis can do for you, but ask what you can do for Banana King Louis. So this is what John F. Kennedy said in his inauguration. Do not ask what America can do for you, but ask what you can do for America. No, for America, yeah. That was meant for Americans, not for the people in Vietnam. Yeah. So anyway, he was really like, famous for being an arrogant guy and everything else, So Jayananda got him to donate something like 32 cases of bananas for free, And it spread all over the produce market. Everybody in the produce market was talking about this. Hey, Louis has gone bananas. He's donating. He got Hare Krishna. Maybe he'll shave his hair. It was just like amazing. People were amazed. So anyway, every year Jayananda would go in there. And then when he left his body, then the devotees went there also before to get the bananas. And Louis said, "Oh yeah, you got Hare Krishnas, the other so and so." You know, hey, where's Jay? You know, and he said, he had got leukemia and actually left his body. And Banana King Louis started crying. He said, "Wow, such a nice person." You know, so. Where does it go? Nihabi kramo nashosti pratyovayana vidyate swapamapiyasa dharmasya. Yeah, there's no loss or diminution. Whatever contact you have and this kind of thing, it's eternal. You know? So these people, by coming in contact with Jayananda like this, were making, transcendental progress. Some of them in this lifetime reap the benefits, but most of them probably the time of death, you'll be looking for anything. Your mind will be just going panicking like anything, trying to find something to hang on to, and then you'll remember that was, you knew it, but at the time of death you realize that was something that I really valued in life. That guy Jay and the Hare Krishnas, and I gave some money later to them, and yeah, yam vapi smaram bhavam tajati yanti kalevaram tam tameva te kontaya. Siddhartha Baba Bhavita. What is your Baba at the time of death? So you got some Baba for these things. In your next lifetime, you'll take birth as a devotee in Iskcon. Yeah. So I would say, it's not an ordinary birth to take birth in Iskcon. To be in the Gurukula and have devotee parents and everything else. But maybe because you're a big demon. Yeah. So you wanted an opportunity to fight with Krishna. So some of these kids may be big demons. Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of ladies who probably agree with this, a lot of mothers who agree that their kids are the worst curse they ever had in life. Yeah. But they're always kind of devotees, even though they hate Krishna or something. Okay, they hate Krishna. Yeah. Yes. So a couple of stories about Jayananda. Yeah. And so stay tuned for tomorrow night. No, Monday night. And then, it's Disappearance Festival. And then Sunday is Nishinga Chaturdasi, like that. My experience on Nishinga Chaturdasi, things are really chaotic and demoniac, kind of passionate, rajarshik influences are really prominent during the day. Okay, Madhava ki jai. So be careful until sunset. Then at sunset, what's his name? Hiranyakasipu gets it. But I had this experience. I don't know. In the daytime, it's chaotic and quibbling and bickering amongst the devotees. So Hiranyakasipu, right to the very end, thinks that he's in charge of everything. But then, in one moment, I'll tell one Nishingadev story. In Los Angeles, I think it was, the devotees had organized. They do really good dramas there. They really organized things very well. So it was going to be a really good play in the temple room. They made a nice throne. And what they really did was they made this column, right, out of cardboard, and they painted it all up, right? And then they got the devotee with the Nishingadev costume inside the column. And they glued it closed, and they thought, well, this is going to really be good. He had said this, Nishingadev will just pop out in front of all the devotees. Wow, okay, everybody will love us. Yeah. So the drama went on and everything else, and then Hiranyakasipu asked Prahlad, he says, "Where is your God?" "Where is your God, Prahlad?" "He's everywhere." "Is he in this column?" "Yeah." He was seeing him, feeling him. So then, the devotee hit the column, and it kind of shook a little bit, and then he hit it again, and it shook a little more. He hit it, and then finally he heard this voice saying, "I can't get out." So they had to thinking I got the costume, I'm learning. So they had to kind of pull it open and so on. So, Nishingadev, Nishinga Chaturdasi ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra ki jai, back to God ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.